Have you ever, like, stared at a 5-minute task for, I don't know, 5 hours?
Oh, absolutely. Too many times to count.
Right. Just completely paralyzed, and you're wondering if you are just fundamentally flawed as a person.
Yeah, like there's something broken inside you.
Exactly. You are sitting there looking at a blank email or a pile of laundry and knowing with every fiber of your being that you just need to act.
And the task is so simple.
Right. The task is simple, the stakes are clear, yet some invisible force is just pinning you in place.
It's awful. But what if your inability to start isn't, a moral failing, but actually just a basic law of physics?
Which is such a wild concept. And that tension, right, between how we judge ourselves and how our minds actually operate, that is our exact mission for today's deep dive.
It's a great topic because when we map physical laws onto psychological states, it completely upends how we evaluate our own worth.
It really does. We are just so conditioned to view inaction as a defect in our character.
Right, rather than just a predictable state of our cognitive operating system.
Yeah. So today, we are taking a highly focused approach. We aren't, like, tearing through some massive 1,000-page textbook.
Thankfully.
Yeah, right. We are zooming all the way in on a highly specific, provocative piece of source material.
Just a title and a subtitle.
Exactly. Just the title and subtitle of a work that manages to pack this entire psychological universe into basically a single sentence.
It really does.
The text we are analyzing is this: excerpts from The Mechanisms of Human Inertia, The Psychology of Laziness Explained Simply.
It is such a remarkable piece of framing, honestly.
Okay, let's unpack this because it hits you immediately, the contrast.
Oh, for sure. In just a handful of words, the author sets up this collision between cold, hard science and deep, culturally ingrained guilt.
Yeah, you have the main title, The Mechanisms of Human Inertia, which carries this immense, like, clinical weight.
Right, very academic.
It sounds like a 19th century physics treatise. You expect to open it and see, I don't know, diagrams of pulleys and luck grips. And then it follows up with this blunt, almost jarringly casual subtitle: The Psychology of Laziness Explained Simply.
The juxtaposition there is entirely intentional.
You think so?
Oh, absolutely. When you place human inertia on one side of the scale and laziness on the other, you basically expose the entire history of how humans gaslight themselves about their own behavior.
Gaslight themselves? How do you mean?
Well, language dictates reality, right? The vocabulary we use to describe our inaction determines whether we actually tried to solve a problem or just punish ourselves for having it.
Ah, I see. And we all know Newtonian inertia from grade school science, right? The whole an object at rest stays at rest, and an object in motion stays in motion.
Unless acted upon by an outside force.
Exactly. So importing that directly into cognitive behavioral psychology, it does something pretty radical to our ego.
It strips away the moral framework completely. I mean, think about a boulder sitting at the bottom of a hill.
Okay, a boulder.
Right. If that boulder isn't moving, you don't look at it and call it unmotivated,
Huh. Right. You don't say, wow, that boulder is really failing to live up to its potential today.
Exactly. You recognize it is simply in a state of rest. So by applying the word inertia to a person sitting on a couch unable to fold their laundry, the source material reframes a behavioral block as a neutral physical baseline.
Because society constantly tells us that if you aren't moving, if you aren't producing, you're failing.
Constantly.
So by calling it human inertia, the text suggests that your inability to get off the couch isn't some sin against productivity. It's just
a law of nature.
Yeah. You are an object at rest.
Yeah.
It completely shifts the blame.
It removes the blame entirely, which is a necessary first step for actual problem solving. When you're stuck, your brain isn't necessarily broken or malicious.
Right.
Often it's just conserving energy. It's overwhelmed by cognitive load, acting exactly as a physical object would without a sufficient catalyst to overcome its mass. I mean, the friction of task initiation is very real.
But, I mean, I have to push back on this framing a little bit.
Okay, go ahead.
We aren't boulders.
Well,
Humans have conscious free will. We have deadlines, we have social obligations, we feel anxiety. A rock doesn't feel the crushing weight of a disappointing performance review, right?
fair point.
So, doesn't applying the rigid, deterministic laws of physics to psychology kind of let us off the hook a little too easily?
How do you mean?
Like, if I miss a deadline and say, well, that's just my human inertia, isn't that just a really sophisticated excuse for not trying? It's like pushing a stalled car in neutral. You can't just say, oh, well, physics, and leave it in the intersection.
Right, right. It is easy to view it as a cop-out, but that implies inertia means surrendering to the state of rest.
Doesn't it?
No, it doesn't. Inertia simply defines the current state of the object. You aren't off the hook. You are just being forced to acknowledge the reality of the physics at play.
Okay, I think I see what you're saying.
Yeah, if you want to move the boulder or push the stalled car, you have to calculate the required force. Beating yourself up doesn't generate forward force, it just generates heat. The friction remains unchanged.
Oh, that's good. It just generates heat. So if the mind is a machine, maybe the starter motor is task initiation, and it's flooded because the task feels too massive.
Exactly.
You don't yell at a flooded engine to try harder.
No, you let it sit or you break the task down to clear the engine.
Right.
And that brings us directly to the second critical word in the main title. The author doesn't just call it human inertia. The text explicitly says the mechanisms of human inertia.
Mechanisms.
Yes. This is where the demand for accountability comes back in. What's fascinating here is what that word implies.
Because a boulder doesn't have mechanisms.
Exactly. A boulder is solid and indivisible. But a mechanism implies a system.
Right, like gears and springs.
It implies a system of interlocking parts, causes, and effects. By stating that human inertia has mechanisms, the text argues that our inaction is not a singular, unchangeable character flaw.
It's a highly complex operational system.
Right. And if it's a mechanism, it can be diagnosed. It can be reverse engineered.
It turns an immovable object into a solvable puzzle. If your inertia is a mechanism, you can start asking incredibly specific practical questions. Like, which gear is stuck?
Yes, exactly.
Is the lever of your motivation jammed by a fear of failure? Is the pulley of your executive function lacking the lubrication of, like, basic sleep and nutrition?
When you break down the overwhelming feeling of paralysis into mechanical faults working memory overload, dopamine deficits, transition friction, you regain agency.
You're no longer a victim of a vague moral failing.
Right. You become the mechanic of your own cognition.
So what does this all mean? Because this purely mechanical view, it feels like it has a massive blind spot.
Okay, what's the blind spot?
I am picturing the human mind as this intricate brass grandfather clock. You open the glass door, you poke at a gear, and the pendulum swings.
Yeah.
But we aren't clocks.
No, we're not.
We are messy, biological, deeply emotional creatures. Does treating the human mind like a machine alienate us from our own humanity?
It's a valid concern.
I mean, can you really take a wrench to something like profound grief or systemic burnout?
See, the mechanistic view doesn't ignore the emotion. It categorizes the emotion as the environment the machine is operating in.
The environment.
Yeah. Grief isn't necessarily a broken gear. Grief is the temperature of the room.
Oh, well, okay.
If an engine is forced to run in sub-zero temperatures, the oil thickens. The battery drains faster. You can't just turn the key and expect it to fire up the way it does on a sunny day.
No, of course not.
The mechanism is actually working exactly as it should under those extreme conditions.
So the burnout isn't a mechanical failure? The failure is expecting the machine to operate at peak efficiency in a hostile environment.
Precisely. Acknowledging the mechanisms means recognizing the limits of the machinery. If you are exhausted, the cognitive gears responsible for emotional regulation and task initiation simply do not have the power supply they need to engage.
It feels like the author anticipates this exact friction, though. This fear that clinical mechanics ignore the messy human reality.
They absolutely do.
Because right after establishing the mechanisms of human inertia, they immediately drop the most culturally loaded, deeply human word possible in the subtitle: laziness.
The pivot is entirely strategic.
Yeah.
Think about it. Mechanisms of human inertia is clinical, safe, and blameless. But laziness is drenched in puritanical guilt. It is a loaded weapon of a word.
Oh, for sure.
The author brings in the colloquial term to forcefully bridge the gap between the academic reality and the reader's lived experience.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Think about a doctor looking at an MRI of a patient's knee.
Okay.
The doctor sees a highly complex mechanical failure of the anatomy. They see an acute lateral meniscal tear caused by repetitive stress.
Right, the clinical causality.
Exactly. That is the mechanisms of human inertia side of things. But the doctor doesn't just read the chart aloud to the patient. They turn to the patient and say, basically, he's got a bad knee.
They are translating the complex structural reality into a cultural shorthand the patient already understands.
But here is the danger in that translation. By replacing the term human inertia with laziness in the subtitle, even with the promise to explain it simply, doesn't the text accidentally reintroduce the very moral judgment it just tried to eliminate?
How so?
Well, when a doctor says bad knee, the word bad carries a tiny bit of judgment, even if it is meant medically. If this text uses the word laziness, doesn't it legitimize the idea that laziness is a real psychological diagnostic category rather than just a societal construct we use to make people feel guilty?
It is a calculated risk on the author's part, but you have to meet people where they are suffering.
Meet them where they are suffering.
Yeah. Nobody sits awake at 2 a.m. Googling how to overcome my human inertia.
Definitely not.
Right. They are searching, why am I so lazy?
Yeah.
You have to use the keywords people are using to punish themselves in their own heads.
Yeah, I love that. It is the search engine optimization of the human soul.
That is exactly what it is. If the text only talks about inertia, the person feeling crushed by the guilt of laziness will never realize the solution applies to them.
Right, they just gloss right over it.
Exactly. The author has to use the stigmatized word to reach the stigmatized audience. But the critical work happens in the phrase, explained simply.
Yes, democratizing the psychology.
Exactly. The text promises to take this toxic cultural myth of laziness and dismantle it by exposing the mechanical reality underneath it.
So it lures you in with the word you use to hate yourself, and then tries to convince you that the word shouldn't exist in the first place.
That's the brilliance of it.
This single fragment of text perfectly captures a massive tension we all carry around every day. We are constantly caught between viewing ourselves as complex, blameless physical systems subject to the laws of human inertia, and judging ourselves through a harsh societal lens where any lack of immediate productivity is stamped as laziness.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this specific juxtaposition reveals something vital for you, the listener, as you navigate your own friction.
Yeah, why does this matter to them?
Because the vocabulary you use internally to describe your lack of motivation dictates your entire problem-solving approach.
That makes total sense. Like if you tell yourself you are being lazy, the only available solution is brute force.
Right.
You try to shame yourself into action. You yell at yourself internally to just try harder, be better, stop being defective.
And shame is an incredibly toxic, ineffective, long-term motivator. It burns out the system faster. But if you shift your internal language and tell yourself you're experiencing human inertia, your approach transforms.
You stop yelling at the machine and you start looking for the stuck gear.
Yes. You approach yourself with curiosity instead of condemnation.
You step back and say, okay, I am an object at rest. What specific mechanism is currently preventing my forward motion?
Exactly. Is the task too ambiguous? Am I running on 3 hours of sleep? Am I afraid of the outcome?
That shift in perspective, triggered by simply swapping out a cultural insult for mechanical reality, can be the difference between remaining paralyzed in a shame spiral and finally taking that first difficult step.
You become an investigator of your own mind.
It gives you permission to play the mechanic rather than playing the judge and jury.
Which is so much healthier.
It really is. Now, as we wrap up this deep dive into just a few incredibly potent words, there's one final lingering question we want to leave you to mull over on your own.
The law of inertia states that an object at rest stays at rest, unless acted upon by an outside force.
Right. In physics, the push always has to come from the outside. A boulder cannot decide to roll itself up a hill.
True.
So, if laziness is truly just human inertia, operating through specific internal mechanisms, what is the psychological equivalent of that external force?
That's the big question.
Can the human machine ever truly jumpstart itself from within? Can your own conscious willpower act as the outside force? Or do you ultimately always need something external like a looming deadline, an expectant friend, a sudden change in your physical environment to finally break that inertia and get your gears turning?
It forces you to critically examine where your momentum actually originates.
It absolutely does. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking those hard questions, pay close attention to the vocabulary you use on yourself, and keep seeking out those aha moments. We'll catch you on the next one.